This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Since he was 8 years old, Michael Ian Cedar has been obsessed with the concept that we have the ability to choose how we feel, act, and react. These choices can then help us build fulfilling lives. Michael is joining me here to chat about the power of gratitude and living life on your terms. Hi, Michael.
Hi, thank you for having me here, Lucy.
You're welcome. So, 8 years old, that's really young to be self-aware and to understand that we all have the power of choice.
Yeah, and you know, as you were reading that and listening to it, I said, wow, that language has now evolved for me. I actually, there's some things in my own bio that I are not philosophically aligned with my full perspective now. So thank you for reading out loud, because I'm like, oh, wow, I actually want to change some of that language. But I do believe we have the option to choose. And yeah, it's really astute of you. Like, why is an 8-year-old? Why did I put that down? Why is that important? So growing up, I never thought, and I really never did. I never thought I was better than anyone else. I never thought that I was like this really, amazing thought leader. But I did recognize that I thought differently now. And I was like, and I don't know what that is. And I don't know if that's good or if that's bad. And but I just thought differently. Now, if we actually go back and look at life under a microscope back then, father, my dad, still alive, awesome family. I'm very lucky. Sometimes I go, maybe my life wasn't screwed up enough to be super, super successful. So luckily I'm doing that without that. But my dad cared a lot about me and still does. And we weren't a family of the best communicators in the entire world. And so whenever I was going through something, my father would reward me with an apple pie from McDonald's if I were to listen to the audio cassette of the corresponding topic that was by Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, Earl Nightingale, right? So here I am, 5, 8, 13 years old, and this is just my normal life. I have a problem in school. I am trying to cope with the way that I learned out in the world, because if we want to give it a label, it's dyslexia, but we didn't know it at the time, how I was processing that and receiving that. And dad didn't necessarily know how to communicate with me on that, but he cared enough to find a corresponding audio cassette from the library to let me listen to, and we would drive around listening to those. And so that was just normal for me. And so I found my growing up was super unique, because I was raised by some fantastic thought leaders, right? Including my father. I was raised by these thoughts and philosophies that, as I matured through life all the way into my 30s, I would just go like, wow, I don't approach the world that way. Maybe I'm still broken. So this whole time I even thought I was broken, because I think a little bit differently, not bad, not worse or better or worse. And it wasn't until my 30s where I went, oh my gosh, I was introduced to a core set of concepts that a lot of people in this world never get to have, especially at the younger generation. So during these critical times of forming, like how to approach the world, my mentors were Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, and Earl Nightingale, and my father and my mother, right? And so that's where that came from, I think. I don't know, but that's my hypothesis.
And I love the way that he sort of used the apple pie as the initial bribe to get you to start.
Bribe.
You were probably all about the apple pie, but after a while it just became a part of you, listening to these thought leaders, that it was then you were then drawn into it.
Yeah, and even growing up, like it was just that was just normal for me. This was just thought process. It was just the dinner time thought conversation we would have, and I would be there with my friends. I can picture being 10, 12 years old and doing like creative visualization exercises with my friends. And I look back at that now, I go, oh, that was interesting now, wasn't it? You know? And I go, and nowadays, one of my biggest things, one of my biggest crusades is, I dabble very lightly in it now, but I just know intrinsically it's something I want to do, is get these thought processes inside younger generations faster, because there's no reason. It's not complicated. In fact, now when I do teach them to younger generations, they typically understand it faster, better, easier than adults who have gone through their trauma, our traumas in our lives, right? And so yeah, now here I get the total honor of taking this knowledge that I've learned from other people, transmuting it into my own words, or sometimes using their words, and helping other people grow. Yeah.
And I find it ironic that these teachings haven't become even part of our education systems, because we have the conversations, we have the anti-bullying campaigns, we have the, support mental health campaigns. We have all of these efforts, but I can't help but wonder why they're not just going to the root cause and saying, we need to learn how to love ourselves right
Yeah.
from the beginning. This needs to be taught to us, because if we're taught these tools, even as early as 5, 6, 7, we're not going to have the mental health crisis that we're dealing with now. We're not going to have all of these problems, because we're going to understand ourselves better,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to have empathy and understanding for the people around us.
It's absolutely mind-blowing to me now. And look, and this does not mean even as a younger kid that I had it right. I just heard the philosophies. It wasn't until mid 30s that I was like, oh, this is starting to click a little bit, right? And now when I teach, like on, I run the Facebook group, the Gratitude Slam, and from there we have some group coaching programs. And when I do the group coaching programs that are called Life on My Terms, Life on Your Terms, Lloyd, people go through it and they go, why was I taught this now? Why was I not taught this as a kid? And we're taught, and this is, hey, your emotions are trying to tell you something. What are they trying to tell you? And the fact that I have 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old men and women in these group coachings going, nobody ever told me this. Like, that's all kinds of fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, that's our fault. That's our fault. That's our fault as a human society, that we've not figured out to do that, right? Hey, Bobby, Sally hit you. What does that make you feel? Angry. What is your anger telling you? Something is not in alignment. Me and Sally disagree on how to play with the toy truck. Great. Now imagine we could speak like that at a true kindergarten level. And fast forward into life when there's problems in marriage, problems in work, and go, hey, I'm feeling sad right now because I felt disrespected in the meeting when you said this to me. And I want to explore that. And right, how screwed up is that we just don't have that? And look, I have gone through, I'm married now to Lauren. It's literally a dream relationship. People think that Instagram is the highlights, and I'm like, no, that's our life. Like, it's really that neat, but I had to go through a divorce, because even though I understood the concepts, I wouldn't accept them and talk about the self-love portion that you talked about. And by experiencing that, I actually became physically paralyzed by denying myself the emotions. I was trying to be stronger than my emotions while going through the divorce, to the fact that I was to the point that I was literally physically paralyzed on my floor. Now, I didn't know why I was paralyzed at that time. Now, going through getting assistance, I go, oh my gosh, I was cutting off from the sadness and trying to be a man, right? And trying to be stronger than that. And, I coach a lot of female executives who are a power mom, especially in the COVID era, where they teach also the math teacher, and they're also responsible for 50 employees, 100 employees, thousands of people, billions of dollars. And in order to do that, they have to make a lot of decisions. And a lot of times they've cut people, I find, cut off from their emotions to try to be stronger than them, to be stronger for everyone else. And in fact, they end up not serving their children or their staff members to the degree, because they're not willing to go, what's that feeling that I have right here? What's that telling me? Ooh, this is telling me I am acting out of breach or I am breaching my own integrity by moving the money to that bank account for my boss or whatever. Instead, we can't be, this is what I want to say. And I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, but what we say in Lloyd is we'll never be stronger than nature. We'll never be stronger than this thing up here that's been programmed for literally millions of years. And if we want to push back on millions, 300,000 years, at least the sapien species has been around. We can't be stronger than it, but we've grown to a point that we can be smarter than it. And again, I think it's a sin. I actually think it's a sin of omission that we do not help more people just understand these fundamentals faster.
And when it comes to, tapping into your emotion and feeling your emotion, that comes to a vulnerability. And for men, it is that much harder. My husband and I, we have two kids. They're adults. They're 19 and 22, two young men. And, they were raised one way and they come back and they share, what they see in the world. They were raised to be vulnerable and to talk things out. And, as I learned about the new thought leaders and people that help guide me, I've shared it back with them. But the message they're bringing back to us is it's just not that way for guys.
So two things. One, the answer is overall, yes, culturally conditioned. We've got that, but we're in this this is my observation personally, and my experience from reading other thought leaders, whether it's Brene Brown, it sounds like, just bringing in the V word there, vulnerability, it's impossible not to bring her to mind, but there's a shift that's happening right now. And and here's a shift, and maybe I'm wrong on it, but this is what I see, and I coach through it, and I've had a lot of success coaching through this. Right now we're in this massive era of women leaning into the table more, as Sheryl Sandberg would say, right? And so women are needing to lean into their masculine energy, not their man energy, right? The masculine energy. We're talking about the yin and yang here, right? And men, in order to communicate to our millennial generations, the younger generations, or just this era of COVID where people's emotions are super sensitive and stuff like that, men are needing to lean into this flowy energy, which is the feminine, right? And again, I'm not talking masculine, feminine as man or woman. I'm just talking about Eastern conversations of what the yin and the yang represents. And from what I've gathered, that would be an acceptable topic to bring in here, right? And so I've got women leaning into the masculine energy, and I've got men leaning into the feminine energy. But what's going on is nobody knows how to do it, right? Because there's literally thousands of years of our society saying, well, this is what a woman should be, this is what a man should be. Now we're to a point that even we're even starting to eliminate man, woman in our vocabularies, or at least in the workplaces with the gender inequality things. And it's fascinating. I'm still gaining my equilibrium on it, but the new language around it is what I mean. But the point is so I've got female executives, because I typically do executive coaching, female executives using responsible or creating products that I promise you use every day because they're that influential in their markets. The female, I'm finding so many of my female executives that I'm coaching, or even if they're not executives, women finding their need, believing that the need is to be stronger than their feelings. And now I've got the men going, what the hell are all these emotions coming around me? And now I'm feeling them, and I'm feeling discombobulated too. But I'm supposed to be a man, and I'm supposed to be stronger than these feelings, right? And so there's a bit of a paralysis going around, because I'll tell you, I was working with an executive that we would all pretty much be familiar with their work. And I just said at a certain point in the conversation, I said, hey, man, it's okay to feel what you feel. And dude, it stopped the room. And to this day, he brings that up with me all the time, and he said that was the pivot point.
It is challenging as a woman in business, and an executive in business, to be authentically yourself, whether you are bringing more of a masculine energy or a female energy. It is hard. Now, I'm my day job, I am in a very male dominated world. I run a manufacturing company and we make roofing tools.
And before you go on, right, that in male dominated does not mean masculine, right? Because
No,
I come from entertainment. The males in that world are generally super feminine energy because they're flowy, emotions, creativity, not binary. But manufacturing is a masculine thing. One thing is Six Sigma. Are 1 million of those pieces of product accurate or
yeah,
not? That's a masculine energy thing. Like it must be the same every single time. That's masculine energy, and
yeah.
needing to uphold that level of Six Sigma. For those of you that don't know what Six Sigma is, it's three. If I'm correct, it's 3 parts per million. Right? Could be wrong. That's it.
It depends what your Sigma. Yeah,
Oh, does it
I'm
matter?
actually I know exactly what Six Sigma is. I'm trained as a black
Oh,
belt.
okay. So you know what I'm talking about, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about. The
I'm,
rest, everyone else is listening, going, "She's got a black belt. She knows karate." No, it's process improvement.
oh, right. Because yeah, and I'll just tell you my favorite wheelhouse is to be able to say Six Sigma and feminine and masculine energy in the same conversation. That is so mine. I know I'm living my best life when I could use those terms in the same 20-minute conversation.
And somebody knows what you're talking about.
And somebody know, and you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, of course, if you work in manufacturing, you're going to understand like masculine energy is the need to get it so right that it can never be off, flawed, or that's masculine energy. And then we get confused as whether you're a man or a woman of like, wait a second, everything must be this perfect, this aligned. But if we have too much of that, we become off balanced, right?
And that's sort of, that's the energy that I bring into it. Is I recognize the masculine environment that I'm in, but I'm me. I show up as me, so I bring balance to the situation.
Do you find yourself, are you naturally, I'm naturally feminine energy. My wife, Lauren, is masculine energy. Predominantly, we vacillate, of course, right?
Hmm.
That's what makes it have the polarity in the relationship. But would you identify naturally and innately as masculine energy or feminine energy?
Probably more feminine.
More feminine for you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so right then, so then you would bring more balance into it, right? You would bring more harmony into a culture that is all about very specific outcome, I would imagine, if that's the case. Yeah.
Definitely. And for me, it was actually through a boss that he sort of mentored me that I started dipping my toe in the world of self-improvement and new thought leaders, because I used to have a decent sized commute to and from the office. It was about 45 minutes to an hour. And he said to me, he goes, well, if you've got a lot of screen time, then you should be putting it to use. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, well, that's it. Screen time is what we refer to being behind your windscreen in your car commuting. He called it screen time. I'm like, oh, okay. And he said, you should be putting it to good use. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, I've got all of these. Okay, this is dating. I've got all of these CDs. I'm going to give them to you. I just want you to listen to them in the car. And that was my first introduction. They were, I guess he had some subscription to monthly CDs from John Maxwell.
Yeah, that was one of my first leadership books. That was the first leadership book I ever read, was 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that was the introduction. It was slow. That's what I experienced. And then several years later, The Secret came out.
Rhonda
and
Byrne.
then it was through investigating, the main speakers in that I got to learn even more. But the reason why I referenced The Secret is because that's where it really popularized gratitude. But for me, I felt, it wasn't until I looked back that I felt it brought this topic up, but it also left a lot out for me. There's a lot that I had to learn about gratitude outside of that. So I guess my question to you is what is gratitude to you? How would you define it?
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up, and I'm glad you're tying it into even The Secret. So I've got The Secret right there on my shelf, and read it probably a few times and seen the movie. And I think Rhonda Byrne did a great gift to the world by mainstreaming some I don't want to say complicated, they're all simple, some super accessible tools that could be used by anybody. But one of the things is because it's the tickler of an introduction and almost the marijuana drug of personal growth and self-help in the law of abundance, there's a lot missing. And so you're saying you read the book and then you were continued on your journey to learn about gratitude. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I watched the movie,
Yeah.
and it took me a while. I could never, it was frustrating because I had all of these pieces of a puzzle.
And she
But
did a great.
I could not figure out how to put it together and make it work for me.
Yeah.
And I even read some of her follow-up books,
Yeah.
and I think that just confused me even more.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the rest of her stuff, but look, the book did do that. It gave the puzzle pieces, right? And then it's up to us as individuals to go, oh, I want to keep following these puzzle pieces, which, like you said, you did. So let's talk about gratitude for a second. Not even the anyone specific gratitude, because I run a group on Facebook, like I said, called the Gratitude Slam. And that came from, even with all of these conversations that we've had about me learning about some of these theories and mindsets and principles and scientific studies since an early age, I always felt really dark. I was always blue. There is depression that is known in my family. I've never been deemed depressed. And I didn't want to be. Even as a kid, I was like, I don't want the label. If I am, I am. I'd rather find the way out. And so I was, even to these dates, there are days where I can get super dark and what I'll call blue without justification. And I don't know why. And I've started to learn. And so me not wanting to be in that space, I was like, what tools can I do to pull myself out of that space? And now I can shift out super fast. Like, it's really, really awesome. And it's what I like to teach a lot of people, is how do you shift out of that space when I do fall there. And what used to take maybe a week to a month, I could probably do in 4 minutes now, and that's not to impress, it's to impress upon. We do have a lot of control. And right then, of course, there's nuances of how the chemicals in our bodies are running and stuff like that. I can only speak to what worked for me. But gratitude was one of the things that worked. And gratitude was not me trying to to convince myself that things are going to be okay, and to have a false impression of hope. And that's why, do you have my bio in front of you there again? Can you read that first line? Because I want to come back to it, because this is what I want to change. It's what you said at the beginning. Read the first, from the age of 8.
Since he was 8 years old, Michael has been obsessed with the concept that we have the ability to choose how we feel, act, and react.
Right.
It's similar to what your bio.
No. But here's that's it. Well, that's it. That's what I wanted to hear. So where I want to change that, and I'm so grateful that you've told me that was written, is because we don't get to choose how we feel. We get to choose what we focus on, which indicates how we feel. And that's a big difference. And so anyone who says, oh, happiness is a choice, I think is full of shit, because it's not a choice. Because if you go to someone who just lost their husband or wife and say, oh, happiness is a choice, it doesn't work like that. Now, I could choose, I could be sad, I could be grieving, and I could still go, what am I grateful for? And gratitude is focusing on, what do I have in the present to bring my focus to what is and not what is not, right? And so I could go, you know what, I really want to do this new project, but it's going to require $100,000 extra. I don't have that. Well, that's not gratitude. That's a focus of lack, right? So I'm focusing on what I don't have. Instead, if I know the project needs 100,000 and I only have 3,000, I can go, I have $3,000 to start with, and I have friends I can go to ask for advice, and I have a great line of credit. So now I'm focusing on what I do have. So a lot of people think that gratitude is about positivity. It's not about positivity, because I don't get to choose to be positive. I get to choose to focus on reality and what I want to do with that reality. And so wizard, I just happen to have a magic wand here, which is a whole story, which is a whole story within itself. And
I was going to say.
And I love Wayne Dyer talking about, very specific thought leaders that influenced my mind, at least. Wayne Dyer's definition of a wizard, I thought, was spot on. A wizard is one who conjures, period, end of story. That's it. And wizards are real to this day. And wizards were real in the medieval times when they had the name wizard. But all a wizard did, they weren't magical. Yes, they might have done things that produced magic. Wizards manifested based on reality. They used gratitude, the law of attraction, and all these things to go, okay, we need something. Well, what do we have? While everyone else was focusing on what we don't have. And people feared these wizards because they were actually able to make things happen. And so if I'm super dark and depressed and feeling blue and I can't find why, and I focus on, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel this way. Life sucks. This should end right now. I should just finish this. I'm focusing on what I don't have. Instead, when I'm sitting just using the feeling, I know I'm vacillating between the topic of like $100,000 project and depression, but I think depression, or the feeling of feeling depressed, because I still don't know if I have depression or not, right? But to be able to go, what do I have? I have the ability to actually look at myself right now. What do I have? I'm here. What do I have? I have stuff. All right, it's not making me feel any better. And that was my starting point. Right. So that was my starting point, is using gratitude. And it took me a while to build out of it, but I got to focus on what I do have. Now, still to this day, I don't know what would possibly trigger me and to have it longer. Now I get to go, I do have the ability to choose what I focus on. And what I'm going to choose to focus on now is this feeling I have right now. What have I not learned yet in my life that it's here again?
Yeah.
And it pulls me out so fast. It again, and I come back, Lucy, to this idea of why did nobody tell me this in elementary school?
Yeah. And on the topic of focus, it's one of the reasons why I don't actively watch the news or watch newspapers.
Nope.
Is because it is, first of all, it's a controlled narrative. And second of all, it's depressing. It's not, and I can see the difference when I watch the news and when I don't watch the news, because it's that, in the same way that what you focus on, you attract. By watching the news, it then affects how I'm thinking and feeling.
And if
it brings me down and it attracts more shit. But if I don't pay attention to it and I choose to only focus on the things that inspire and uplift and engage me, those problems in the news still exist. They don't go away. I just don't focus on them. I focus on the things that I can control and what I can choose. And it completely changes your energy and your outer world.
Well, the news creates fixation, and fixation is energy against the uncontrollable, right? And, the big question is, just, I'm on a 100% news diet. I mean, maybe it sneaks in because it's in front of me or something, or Lauren will read a page off the paper that might impact my day, like, hey, there's protests going on, be careful walking, whatever.
Yeah.
And I've never been to news, and I'm sure, just like me, Lucy, you probably get a lot of criticism on that. Yet I've never missed anything in my entire life. I might have been 30 minutes.
I've been called naive.
Yeah, I might be 30 minutes behind everyone else, but I've never missed anything. Right?
I kind of have to watch the news because in Canada and where I am, we're still under third, fourth, whatever. Yeah. And I've got caught out because I didn't realize that there was a lockdown or something going on.
Look, I
didn't listen to the news.
I've still never, even with that, I've still never missed out. And if I did, someone shames me and I go back inside, whatever.
You're like, okay.
But look, I'll watch the news if there's something that pertains to me and I have to know the information. Like if it's a database news thing, hey, I'll go watch it. And man, is the news addicting. But the question is the thing that I don't know if there's a lot of awareness. I don't know how much awareness around there is why is it that the news is, I think you called it depressing and frenetic. No, you didn't say frenetic, but why is the news focused on that kind of stuff that's super nasty? Why do you think?
Oh, if I look at sort of what I think is the big picture and the the underlying theme of everything is that ultimately, and this even goes back to our education system and why they're not teaching it into school, is that ultimately they, the collective they, are pushing us out to be those clock punchers, those 9 to 5 people that are kept in a box and controlled.
Well, I love Seth Godin's Stop Stealing Dreams. And if you don't know what that is, and if you're listening to this, Google Stop Stealing Dreams, Seth Godin. It is the history of the modern education system and why, and literally down to why was the number 2 pencil produced. It is possibly one of the most.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Yeah, it is so good. So I'm saying that to everyone listening to this. But 2, yeah, the news. So here's the deal. The news is produced, like you said, right? It's super controlled. As we talked about here, we can't be stronger than this computer up here, but we can be smarter than it because we've grown to that point, and that's our next evolution, is to grow smarter than this computer up here, which will eventually make us even stronger than it. But right now, in our lifetime, we're never going to be stronger than these emotions and the trigger systems and the fight, flight, or free systems that have been around for truly millions of years. The reptilian brain, the primal brain, the monkey brain, the amygdala, the limbic system, whatever name you want to give it. It's been around way before we had podcasts, way before we had words, way before we had dance and song, right? And our brains are wired to survive, right? And things that make us feel good don't help us survive. Things that prevent us from dying help us survive. The news capitalizes on the limbic system, the monkey brain, the primal brain, the lizard brain, whatever you want to call it, by getting it into a state of fear. And that's why I'm really excited in 5 years from now, in the studies about how the US election impacted the impacts of COVID's lockdowns and everything. And I don't know what that is. I'm really not suggesting that is it. I just can't imagine it. How could it not? It was the base platform. I'm not saying COVID didn't exist and it wasn't important, but how much of it was because the news wanted their advertising dollars and politics were using it as a way to induce a massive amount of fear, right? Because the more fear we have, the more we want to watch it, because when there's fear, there's something at our survival. If humans were more attracted to positive feelings than negative feelings, the news would be happy and you and I would be watching it all the time. But that's not the current state of humanity, and it's not going to be for probably a few 100,000 more years until our brains do catch up to our ability to think stronger than it thinks on its own.
And I think this is a great opportunity to bring in your Facebook group,
Yeah.
Gratitude Slam, because instead of watching the news,
yeah,
let's find the gratitude and the inspiration and the things that will uplift us. So what are some of the ways that people can connect with you?
Yeah, that's a great, thanks for inviting your audience in. The Gratitude Slam is on Facebook. There are even some people who are like, I'm not on Facebook, but they heard from their friends and they joined Facebook only to be members of the group. So if you Google Gratitude Slam, and the reason it's called Gratitude Slam because he slammed down the gratitude, like we're slamming down knowledge here and thoughts and emotions, right? And so if you Google Gratitude Slam, or you go to Facebook and look for Gratitude Slam, it'll come right up. And that's I would connect right from there. And if you want to connect to me directly, just find Michael Ian Cedar on any social media platform for the most part, and we can connect there too. But every single day I ask questions and create it's a free platform, at least as of right now it is. I respond to, unless I miss it, virtually everyone who responds to the questions daily. And I do a Tuesday video every Tuesday that is live, that people join and participate. And then those who can't join, watch the replay of it and still get to participate. But it's about focusing on what we do have control over. And I'm super lucky. It's about 1,500 members strong right now, and it's got like an 80% activity rate, meaning 80% of the members are active weekly on it. So it's not this huge thing people get lost in, and I never want it to become that. But I'm really proud of the group, because as a coach to executives, not everyone has currently the resources to be able to bring me on, and there's only one of me anyway, so I can't be everywhere for everyone. But it's my way of really living my life's purpose. which is to be able to help take some of this knowledge I gained over the years and perspective I gained over the years, share it, and maybe it's for people or maybe it's for not. But so far, I've got a lot of feedback that it's literally saved lives, as well as helped get people on track living in their life purpose, having more gratitude, not feeling dark and depressed, and having a perspective that makes them feel good about themselves. So Gratitude Slam, Facebook, or just Google it.
Well, if you're looking at connecting with Michael, check out the show notes. I am going to have all of the links in there. I am also going to see if I can find that link to the Seth Godin Stop Stealing Dreams. So check out the show notes. And Michael, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Lucy, so much for having, and thank you, listeners, for letting me be in your ears for this time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like